Nathalia, welcome to the show. So excited to have you here. You're another badass mujer that we are introducing to the Yo Quiero Dinero audience who is doing incredible work in the personal finance space. For folks who don't know you, give us a little intro. Tell us what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Nathalia. I am a part-time money coach, full-time 9-to-5er, mom, wife, all the things. And I love talking money because it's been my passion for the past 5 years, ever since I started my own financial journey to get myself out of debt.
Okay, so let's dive into that financial journey. So from what I know about you, you were able to pay off over $18,000 in credit card debt, and your platform is really about normalizing the quote unquote regular person's journey to getting their financial shit together. And you mentioned that there's a lot of sensationalism out here when it comes to those personal finance stories like I highlighted, where it's like I paid off 100K in like 2 weeks, and it's like good for fucking you, but that's not most people's regular experience. So take us back. Take us back to the beginning of your personal finance journey. First, what did you learn or maybe not learn about money growing up?
I didn't learn anything. Honestly, all I learned was how to spend it.
That's real.
That was the extent of my education. My mom, I only ever saw her spending money. Well, she did teach me how to earn money, how to work hard. She really instilled the go-getter in me. And so, I'll give her that. She really set me up to succeed when it comes to making money, to establishing my career, to being a hard worker and always kind of standing out in my workspace. So that part, yes, I got that on lock. But unfortunately, I was never ever taught to save. I was never taught about paying off debt, why it was important, about investing. I really had no idea about any of it until I taught myself.
Yeah, that is real. And that is the experience for a lot of people who listen to this show. So you are not alone in that. I'm curious because one of the narratives that I find very common in our community as Latinos is like, you must focus on a really big money making career. Did you ever have a pressure from your family to pursue a specific career because of the money you were going to earn?
Not necessarily. I mean, my mom always wanted me to be in a career that was well known. And I think she still uses me as a trophy example. I do work for the public defender's office here in the county. And so I feel like she sees that as oh, my daughter made it. Now, I'm not an attorney, but I am a paralegal there. And I think she's always wanted me to have some kind of noteworthy place that I work at. She did want me to be a lawyer. Just wasn't in the cards for me. Honestly, I chose my mental capacity over the money. But I think a big narrative when I was growing up was, you have to pursue education. You have to find yourself a nice, comfortable career that's going to pay well. But there was never so much of a pressure of you have to be a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
I think for her it was I want to be able to talk about what you do kind of thing. I want to show you off, which was but for me, it was more about finding something that I was really passionate about, that I was going to enjoy. And I think that's the biggest blessing for me, is that I absolutely love what I do. Now, could I get paid more? Absolutely. Especially as a government employee, where I'm going to hit my pay cap this year. And so that means that I do not get any more raises unless I move to a different position or get promoted to a supervisor, which I don't necessarily want to do, which is the downside of being a government employee. So I think other than that, she's been happy with where I've ended up.
Was this always your career plan? Did you want to be in the legal field, or did you make a pivot at some point?
No, I always wanted to be in the legal field, and the part of the legal field that I wanted to be did change. I originally wanted to be a district attorney, and because of just my own past and my own brother being a victim of crime. And I actually ended up doing an internship with the public defender's office and falling in love with the work because it's so different. I think the media makes people who commit crimes look evil and like these horrible people, and a lot of them are not. It's a lot of issues about poverty and their circumstances, communities that lack resources. They're all people of color. And so my favorite part of my job is that I get to tell those stories, is I get to tell stories of our clients who really don't have what most of us get. And they grow up in some of the worst circumstances. And then we somehow expect them to still make good choices. So that's why I love my job, because it's really like a passion. It's a passion project for me. And I love everything that I do. So I think that's why it's also hard for me to try to pivot out just for the money. So it's kind of like a twofold, where I love what I do, but I would also love to make more money.
Absolutely. That is a delicate balance to walk. But I think most people find themselves in situations where they don't even like the job that they're doing and they're not getting paid. So at least it's that. At least you have found something that you are excited to wake up for every day and you know that there's impact beyond the income. I assume that maybe part of the reason why you wanted to get your money shit together was because the money just doesn't go far enough. You live in Southern California, which we all know is a super high cost of living area. So what was the catalyst for you wanting to become proficient in financial literacy?
So for me, it was that I became the breadwinner. So my husband became a stay-at-home dad in 2017 because he was essentially going to only be working to pay for childcare. And we didn't feel, especially because he hated his job. His commute was very long and it just made more sense, right? I made more money. I love what I do. I was always like more into my job than he was. He just was not happy there. And so it just made sense. So he quit his job in 2017, became a full-time stay-at-home dad since then. And so at that point, I really felt that I had to get it together. I'm like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to give my daughter a good life? How am I going to pay for classes for her? How am I going to do any of this if I have no extra money? I was living paycheck to paycheck. I had $0 in savings. I was constantly scrambling for money. I didn't feel like a good mom. And I don't know what changed, like something switched in my head and I had to like really look at what I was doing and I had to teach myself because I was like, if I ever have to give my daughter the best life possible, I have to be good financially and I have to have the cash flow to do it. And so something just clicked in my head one day and I did a money audit for myself and I looked at what was going on and I was flabbergasted by what I saw.
What did you see? Take us back to what were you looking at and how did you actually perform that audit?
So what I did was I downloaded my bank statement into an Excel and I literally went line by line, which is what I still do with my clients today. I'm like, let's see where your money is going for real. And so we went line by line, just kind of seeing, okay, where was I spending it? And I think the biggest shocker for me, and I felt so full of shame when I saw this. At the time, we were renting like a back apartment. It was the three of us and we were fine because, she was still little. We were only paying about $650 in rent. When I did the tracking, I saw that I was spending basically $600 in 1 month, the month that I did the tracking, on eating out and drinks.
Damn.
But just myself, not like me and my husband. Just me by myself. And so I was like, what is happening? But I also realized it came up twofold. I was so stressed out as a new mom and there was so much going on, so much pressure that I was like escaping on these like weekly happy hours with my friends to de-stress. And so it was twofold. It was me noticing where my needs were and where I was not meeting myself and taking care of myself. And that in turn turned into a financial issue. Now, that doesn't mean that's what got me into 18,000 credit card debt. This is something that had been accumulating over time. I literally cannot remember a time in my adult life where I did not have credit card debt because it was normalized for me that as long as I was paying the minimum payments, that I was fine, right? That was the kind of the constant was like, if you're paying your minimum payments and you're paying everything on time, then you're good. So I had a really good credit score because I never missed payments. I had various cards, but I never was completely debt free. And so even when I consolidated my credit card debt, which was the first step I took after I saw everything that was going on, I consolidated my credit card debt in 2018. What happened because I didn't create a budget and I didn't create a plan was I maxed out a third credit card.
Yes, yes.
So, it's like you take one step forward, but until you do everything all in, you're not going to make progress. So at the end of 2019, I finally created a budget. I finally sat down and created my very first budget. And I remember being on YouTube for hours trying to figure out how to work a budget because I had no idea. And so I finally found a budget that worked for me, which is the budget by paycheck method, which still used to this day. And that's when I finally started seeing progress. I learned about sinking funds. I started saving. I had never had savings before in my adult life. And the way that my husband and I started saving kind of for fun to try to get our first $1,000 together, we did this 100 envelope challenge, which is you get 100 envelopes, you put the numbers 1 through 100, and then you pick one randomly and you fill it up. And you can do it every week or however. And that's how we saved our first $1,000.
Wow. Okay, wait. Well, there's so much like that you just shared with us that I have to break down several parts of this. First thing that jumps out at me is your husband decided to become a stay-at-home dad, which is quite controversial in general society, but in Latino culture, that shit is fucking unheard of. So, what was that conversation like for you guys? And like, did y'all get the side eye from family members like when they became aware that this was like happening?
Not from family, but definitely from outsiders, like coworkers of mine or other people, other men. Our family was very supportive. Honestly, they have never really said anything to us about it. Those comments started coming later on, like even more recently, where my daughter started getting school age and she's in school and everybody has this like expectation. We're like, well, now he can go back to work full time and now he can, because she's in school. Well, what is he going to do? I'm like, why is it your business what he's going to do? Yeah. So we're definitely been still battling that. But in the beginning, I think it was very easy for us because we fell into the roles naturally. He is very naturally a caregiver. He's very, very like involved, hands-on, has always been great with her, a little bit better than me just because I struggle with that identity. I didn't plan to have kids. It kind of happened by surprise. And so it wasn't in my plan, right? It wasn't in my vision. And I really struggled with that for a while, but it just felt natural. I was the one that loved my job, my career. I was like, I love working. This is what I want to do. I've always seen myself as like, I want to work. And he hated his job and he was much better at the caregiving part. And if it was easier for him. And for many reasons, it's been a godsend because he's always been better with the boundaries and like the setting expectations with her. He was the one that got her to nap because I could not get her to nap by herself. It's just like those little things, right? Like it was just easier for him and working was easier for me. So we were lucky in that sense that we fell into those roles naturally and financially it made more sense.
I love that perspective because I feel like oftentimes people just really think that they need to fall into the quote gender roles that society has dictated for us, right? That man has to always be the provider and the woman always has to be the caretaker. And like people don't know what to do when maybe they just don't identify with that expectation, right? And so it sounds like you guys have a very like you're very comfortable in your own skin and you're okay owning your strengths and weaknesses. And I think that is something that every partnership needs to just keep it real. Like if you were out here trying to live what society says is like the right fucking thing, you're probably going to be like out here stressed out making decisions that aren't even about y'all. And so I have the same setup in my house. My fiance is the full-time stay-at-home dad and we love it. He's a better caretaker than me. Like I be getting stressed out and he's like, you need to fucking relax. Like it's not that serious. You know, everything is a crisis for me. And he's just very like level-headed and that's cool. You know, like that's just, we figured out what works. I also want to dive into something that I think a lot of people can relate to, which is using money to self-medicate. So you talked about how you were, you know, escaping off to happy hour because you're so stressed out as a new mom and inadvertently causing yourself a lot of financial stress because you're using money to mask a bigger issue, which in your case, and for a lot of people, it's like mental health issues that are not being addressed. You're not getting that level of support that you need. Life is stressing you out and you haven't found out ways to like be more intentional about how you address those things. So how did you actually come to a place where you're not using money in that way? Because I think a lot of people still struggle with that.
It took time. I think that's what I always emphasize to people is it took time. But for me, a big part of it, which I'm glad that I fell into the side of the financial world that's not like the Dave Ramsey judgmental, shameful side, where putting things into your budget that you love, that you don't want to let go of, that bring you happiness just at a reasonable amount made a huge difference. One thing I always tell my clients is like, I didn't stop eating out because I hate cooking. You know, I didn't stop buying coffee. I didn't stop having these things just because I was now on a budget. I made sure that I included the money for the things I wanted to do. But the difference was that I knew what my limit was now. Because I had a budget, I had a plan. I knew exactly how much money I had for what. And then I really was like, okay, I'm paying attention. I'm being intentional. And then I also found ways to fulfill my cup really that didn't cost money. And I really tried to connect with those things like hiking with friends, like reading a book. And so I made a list of things that I could do that didn't cost money, that I enjoyed and that filled my cup so that I could start doing them. I would encourage my friends, my mom friends, like, hey, let's go for a walk with the kids in the stroller, which is free. We can talk. We could just go for a walk. We would go running with the kids in the stroller. And so really finding the things that, one, don't require money. And then two is making sure you do have the money for the things that you love, because just saying, I just have to stop eating out, or I just have to stop doing this, that's not going to solve it. You're not going to do it.
Yeah. Once it feels like deprivation and like you're just giving up everything that brings you even a little bit of joy, that's when shit just doesn't become sustainable. And you can think about it like if you go on an extreme budget, or you go on, try to do some ridiculous, like not realistic weight loss plan or exercise plan, or just anything. Trying to go to the extreme of shit is how you can guarantee failure, and I don't think it's any different with money. I also want to talk about, you mentioned that you had consolidated your credit card debt, but then found yourself pretty much in the same situation right away. And so that happens, I think, to a lot of people, because there's not like this long-term plan of like, how am I actually going to fix the fucking problem? Which is why I'm continuing to put things on credit cards, not the fact that I owe this money. Like, you can use credit cards responsibly, but it does take a level of discipline. So how did you tackle that? Because I think oftentimes people have the best intentions, but sometimes it's just like, why do I keep reliving this same shit?
I think for me, what really helped me was, at the time, this was pre-COVID, I did the envelopes with the money, cash stuffing. And so I literally had, like, for example, $100 for groceries. So I put the cash, and I would only take $50 to the grocery store with me, and that's it. No debit card, no credit card. I would only take that money. And I think doing that really helped me with my brain when I would go and I would just kind of get whatever. And then when I would go to checkout and realize, oh, I'm going to go over, I would put things back. And the more I did that, the more I trained my brain to understand the limit and to understand the boundary with my budget. And the second thing is really just preparing ahead of time. So for me, sinking funds have been huge. It's planning ahead, planning for what expenses are coming, so that when the time comes, you have the money, you're not stressed out about it. It's that you are able to spend without feeling guilty, without feeling the fear of like, how am I going to pay this off? So it took a lot of like little practices like that, and also my own mindset around money and understanding my new relationship with money as it was now. But I think for somebody like me, I was very, very anxious. And what helped me was I felt in control. When I was doing my budget, I felt like I had control back instead of kind of like a free for all, right? Before, what I would do is I would get paid, I would pay my bills. Whatever was in my checking account was a free for all. It was like debit card, swipe, 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 until I was either at $20 or in the negative, withdrawing my account, calling my mom, telling me to like transfer some money until the next payday. It was like that kind of chaotic feeling, versus in a budget, I had a plan, and doing things like creating a checking account buffer and like practicing my intentionality with like having only the cash. It just started to teach my brain to think about money differently.
Yeah, it is a reprogramming. And I want people to understand and listen to what you're saying, which is it takes practice, y'all. Like, you're not going to get this shit right the first time. And there's a lot of different budgeting methods out there. So you need to figure out the strategy that is actually going to be sustainable for you. Some people are cool with like the zero-based budget where they're like budgeting every single penny. That would drive me insane. I can't do it. So I tried the different methods, the 50, 30, 20. I've tried the pay yourself first. And these things evolve too. The ultimate goal is like to get to a place where you don't even have to think about budgeting, because your shit's just on autopilot. You know what you need to be doing. But until you get to that point, you got to find out the system that works for you. So let's dive into your system. What does your budgeting frequency look like? And what kind of accounts do you have? Do you just have a checking and a savings? Do you have a bunch of accounts? So what does that look like for you?
So I have my budgeting. I do budget by paycheck. It's a single budget that is literally copy and paste. And that's what I tell my, it's that easy. It's just copy and paste every single month, the same exact things. And I just adjust for whatever's coming up next. So my savings and goals are always changing, because as you go through time, or even like depending on the season, you're saving for different things, right? I have two checking accounts actually. I have one for my bills, And then I have one for my variable spending so that I move that money over and I know, okay, this is the money that is for my groceries, my gas, for things that kind of come and go. And I could just pay the credit card from there. So I do use credit cards now. I taught myself how to use credit cards through that whole process. And one of my favorite things now is to do travel hacking. We're actually going to Guatemala in April. I got the flights for free because when you are a family on one income, you got to get creative. And so the way that you're able to travel is by doing that. And so I do have a credit card that I use and I pay from there the variable spending account. And then I do have other high yield savings account for my emergency fund and sinking funds. I don't know if you want also like investment accounts. I have a 529 for my daughter. I have a Roth for my husband. I have a Roth for myself. And then I have my own 401k and 457b through my job.
That's
so
amazing.
As far as accounts.
From somebody who literally didn't even have a savings account, girl, you killing it. Okay.
Thanks.
That's amazing. Okay. Let's dive into sinking funds a little bit for folks who are just hearing that term for the first time. And they're like, what the fuck is that? Like, is that for the kitchen or?
It could be, but so a sinking fund is just like I call it a mini savings. So it's not your emergency fund. Your emergency fund is kind of either 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months of your fixed expenses. And you have it kind of sitting there for when an emergency happens. But sinking funds are for things that you know are going to happen. They're things that are coming up. So think Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, those kinds of things, car registration. These are things that we know are going to happen.
Yeah.
We know.
People get surprised that Christmas is always December 25th.
Well, that took me by surprise, right? And that's the thing. I'm like, we know these things are going to happen. You know when your mom's birthday is. You know when your kid's birthday is. Plan ahead so you have the money, right? Like I said, we're going to Guatemala in April. I've been saving for that for months, right? Because I've just been saving up little by little so that I could have the money that I need. And now I'm done. I already hit my goal a month early. And so all sinking funds is set small goal that you have, or it could be also more long-term. Maybe it's house renovations. Maybe it's a moving fund. Maybe it's buying a house fund, right? It could be anything that you're planning for savings when you need the cash that's not supposed to be invested. You need the cash for something. And so what I always tell people is it could be twofold. It could be this something that you have a set goal for. So for example, let's say you have a vacation in a year and you want to save $5,000. Okay, so just divide 5,000 by 12 months. That's how much you need to save monthly. Or you could even do it further and do it by paycheck, right? And that makes it a little bit easier. You can have something that's kind of flexible. So for example, I have like a car maintenance fund, which you don't always know exactly how much your car maintenance is going to be. So I just kind of throw $100 here and there, and I almost have 1,000 already. So that when my car does need maintenance or something comes up, I have that already. So it's just about planning ahead and thinking about, okay, what do I need my money for? Where does it have to go right now so that I can be ready for the things that I want to do? And that's all it is.
I love that. I love that perspective because oftentimes we only hear about the emergency fund, but like Christmas is not an emergency, y'all. It's just some shit that happens every year. And so that's why you have to like reframe how you think about savings because yes, there are things that you cannot plan for. And that is where your emergency fund comes in. But you know, every year you need to go to the doctor and you have X amount of deductible, or if your pet gets sick and you got to take them to the vet, like there are things that you know are going to happen. And so you want to be able to plan for those things, deductibles for insurance, like you mentioned, your car registration, anything that you know is something annually that you're going to have to plan for, or even things that you want to do. Like maybe you create a sinking fund for your first home purchase, your down payment, or you create a sinking fund for that trip that you want to take with your family. It's just about making sure that like you can see the progress that you're making on these individual goals instead of just having all your money in one pot and then trying to earmark X amount of dollars when it's very hard to tell when you just have like that one big number, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I think when people hear the word budget, oftentimes they automatically think of their Dave Ramsey or just like stress, deprivation. This sucks. Like it's a short-term thing that I'll do and then I'll get my financial shit together and then we never have to worry about this again. But I think when I started really appreciating the power of a budget was when I started using like a values-based approach. And so for me, it was about getting a lot of clarity around like, what do I want my money to like allow me to do? And for me, the answer was, I want to quit my job. I want to travel. I want to be work optional, like all these things. And then when I got very clear on the reason why, it's felt a lot easier to like stick to those goals. So for you, what was the greater why? I know you mentioned like wanting to give your daughter options and just be able to like be the mom that you want to be, but it's hard to stay motivated sometimes, even when you have the best intentions. So how do you do that?
I'll be honest with you. My favorite part about sinking funds is spending without caring. That's my favorite part, because once I have the money saved, I will feel so secure and safe knowing that I will not be creating new debt. That is a big thing for me, because after being in so much credit card debt, not creating new debt is kind of like the next practice, right? And the way that you make sure you don't create any new debt is by having savings. And so for me, sinking funds and my why is because I want to feel free. I want to be on vacation and not care about what I'm spending, not care about what we're doing, because I know that I have my sinking funds and have my savings to catch me regardless of what happens. We went to Japan last year and we had a chance to stay at the Conrad, which is like one of the best hotels there in Tokyo. And we could spend a second night at a reduced rate, but it was still going to be, I think everything came out to $1,300. And I did not freak out. Didn't freak out. I knew I wasn't going to go into debt over it because we had the money saved extra. And because I had travel hacked so much of the trip, we were able to save more money. So I was just enjoying it. I remember so clearly sitting up there on like the highest level, drinking champagne, looking out the window with not a worry in the world, ordering whatever I wanted because I didn't care about the money in that moment because I knew I had set myself up. And that's the difference. It's that security and like the mindset of like, I got this because I planned for it. And I think that's why it feels better for me to do it, because I like spending. I'm a spender, clearly. Like I'm an overspender
See that,
sometimes.
and I was going to say, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to spend your money. You work fucking hard for it. But the thing is that you don't want to spend it in a way where like you're robbing your future self or you're causing yourself mental health issues because now you're like stressed out about how the hell am I going to pay for this? I know what that's like. For many years, I was using travel to like self-medicate that I hated my fucking job. And so I would literally be like booking trips while I was on trips and thinking like, it's going to get put on the credit card. I'll deal with this shit later. And then I would just come home and have like a huge hangover from spending because I wasn't actually being intentional about planning for this stuff, but also I was using the spending to mask a greater issue. And so it's important to understand, like, why am I spending money and am I spending it in a way that is not going to perpetuate into a cycle of drama, whether that is debt or anxiety or missing out on your actual like financial goals because you're stuck in this like immediate gratification cycle. Now, I think one of the things that is cool about the credit card hacking is that literally like credit cards will be out here paying you to use their cards. But it takes a certain level of discipline, especially if you are a spender, to not end up in a situation where, yeah, maybe you're getting like travel rewards points, but you're also paying like 30% interest and basically negating all the perks that you would get by using these credit cards. So how do you stay disciplined? Because it's not easy.
So I still track my money. I still track my money pretty close. I sit down and I track so I know exactly where my money's going. I still do it. I like doing it. I enjoy it because I like seeing what's going on, bringing that awareness to everything. And so the second that I see like, hey, we're kind of going over a little bit more than we would like, we have these goals that we're set on, like, let's pull back a little bit. So for me, it's about being intentional. For me, tracking my money is about being intentional with every decision that I make and like feeling like I'm still working towards my goals while still enjoying my life. And so whenever I open a new credit card, I always make sure I'm tracking it, make sure I'm paying it off. And so I pay a lot of attention. For me, I sit down with my budget at least once a week. And what I do is I have like on my budget sheet, each credit card and what the balance is. So I know what I need to pay. I honestly pay my credit cards weekly so that there isn't a balance. Because it's like that, I'm not going to pay interest again. I'm like, no, I refuse to pay interest. So it's just about paying attention. And yes, actually, credit card hacking takes a lot of discipline because you have different credit cards, you're changing here and there. It's not for everyone. And more extensive hacking, honestly, is a lot for me. And so I've just kind of kept it very simple. And now I'm just paying attention to the cards that I have now before I open anything else. But I love it because it's been a great way for us to, it got us to Japan. I mean, I saved over $8,000 on a trip to Japan. So when you're on one income, you really have to like get creative. And for me, travel hacking has been the way to make it happen. It was kind of a dream trip for us. My husband and my daughter loved it. We were there for 2 weeks. And so to make that happen on one income less than 100K was a huge win. But I couldn't have done it if I didn't travel hack it because it took a lot of points and it took a lot of preparation and thinking about things in order to get it to that level.
I love that. Okay, so speaking of being a single income household, I think it's very common to hear the stories of women who decide to become stay-at-home moms and then feel like they don't have any financial say or any financial power in the relationship. How do you guys navigate that in the reverse situation where you are the breadwinner? Like, do you give your husband an allowance? Like you mentioned, you have a Roth IRA for him. So how does that work?
So I actually set it up because I found out about the spousal IRAs. And so I set it up that way. So I contribute to it because and I told them something to tell them like, you're lucky that I think about these.
Yo, facts. Because a lot of these men out here are not thinking about their wives. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. I know so many moms who are stay-at-home moms. And I'm like, do you have like your own retirement account? Do you have your own savings? I know because it's scary. Like what's going to happen for you later on? And so that's why I tell my husband, I'm like, you're lucky that I like think about this and that I want to set you up because I don't want you to ever have to worry about that. So one of the things I did also was set up term life insurance for me because as the breadwinner, that's a huge risk that if I can't work or something, if I pass away, whatever happens, he needs money. He needs income to get back on his feet and get started again. And so I've set us up so that he is protected regardless of what happens. And one thing for me, and I think this comes from like the relationship trauma in my family, is I'm very big on making sure that we're working together as a team and that he's included, regardless of the fact that I'm the one that makes the money. And that's actually where the comments have come in. I have gotten comments of like, well, you're the one that makes the money. You make the decision. And I was like, that's not how my marriage works. That's not how my marriage works. Because if I want to have a successful marriage, we're going to be partners. We're going to make decisions together. So even if I may not agree with him, if he doesn't want it, then we're not going to do it because we're here together. We're working on it together. And it's not just me just because I make the money. And I honestly, sometimes I feel like maybe it is because I'm a woman. I think this way. I don't know.
No, girl, it definitely is. Okay. Because these dudes are not out here thinking like that.
Yeah. And it's so unfair. So I did set that up for him. He doesn't have an allowance. Like now he's working part-time. He started working part-time recently, which has been great. And so another way for us to save more money, but his money is his money, whatever he wants to use it for. We have had conversations because he also tends to spend a lot on certain things. So we've had to have conversations. We talk about it all the time. He's like, come on, money coach, tell me what to do. That's kind of like our joke. But honestly, for me, it's more about working together and having open communication and not being in control. Like, sure, I'm the one working and sure, I'm the one making money, but I'm married. He's my partner. He's not my subservient or something. I don't know.
I love that perspective. And I think the more that we like have these conversations with breadwinning women like yourself and normalize that, like, you don't have to be strong arming your partner because you're the one making the money. Like, that's how shit changes. That's how the narrative around being the stay-at-home parent changes. And I do think that your thoughtfulness does come as a function of the fact that you are a woman. I'm just going to say that because that's just what I've seen when I've had this discussion with other people. I'm curious, do you guys have all your money like in joint accounts or do you have separate accounts or kind of a combination?
So I manage everything and he likes that.
Of course he does. I mean, why wouldn't you want the money coach managing the money?
Yeah, I think it just kind of fell, but I am very intentional about like, hey, you know where our money is? Like, hey, you know where this is? You know where your Roth IRA is? Do you know? I want him to know this just in case of anything. But I think we've just, again, fell naturally into the role of like, because I'm a money nerd, I'm the one that handles everything. We don't have any joint accounts, so everything is under my name, but he has access to it. Honestly, that's what worked for us. And solely based on the fact that because I'm a money coach and because I enjoy it and he doesn't, And that's why I do it. But whenever we've had tough conversations about needing help and me needing help now at some point when our goals are changing, our situation is changing. We recently had like a very traumatic situation with family and we had to leave and move out of the place that we've been in for like the past 12 years. And it took a lot of hard conversations between us to being like, well, we're going to have to pay more rent. I need help now. I can't carry it on myself anymore. At my job, I can only do so much. The business is kind of ebbs and flows. And so I need help. And that's why he decided to go back and work part-time, but always with the conscious intentionality that he has to be the one to pick up our daughter because there's times where I just can't. We also are a one-car family, so that makes it even harder. And again, that's been an intentional decision that we've done. We bought an e-bike instead because we don't want to spend the money right now to buy a second car. And that's something else that we've gotten comments about, right? Like, why don't you just buy another car? It's like, well, that's not where we want our money to go right now. And so there's been a lot of hard conversations that we've had to work through. It hasn't been easy. And I don't want to make it seem like it has, because it's all about me and him sitting down and like getting really real and me being able to ask for help and being able to communicate what I need from him in order to feel more supported and not feel like I'm carrying all of it on my own.
Yeah, that's the key, right? What you mentioned, communication is just that open transparency, I think is so important. And this is a good reminder for folks who are in this same dynamic where maybe you are a single income household. You definitely want your partner who is not the one who is managing money to know where the accounts are, how to log in, like what do we have? And that could look like literally creating either a digital or a physical, like list of logins. Okay. That's part of your estate plan, y'all. And if you want to find out more about that, pick up a copy of my book because you would not be surprised how many people drop dead and then their partner has no fucking idea how to access the money, or they were never put on any of the accounts for beneficiaries. And then all of a sudden, all these things that you thought were going to be accessible to them are not, because there's no transparency as to what is going on in the household when it comes to finances. Okay. So you are travel hacking your way to Japan. Now you're going to Guatemala. You are out here saving, investing, killing it financially. Tell me what you would tell someone who finds themselves in the position that you were at the initial start of your journey, where it's just like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm in debt, it feels hopeless. Where the hell do I start?
Honestly, for me, is ask for help and ask people around you, and don't do it alone. Like if you're listening to this podcast already, you're ahead, and start to look at the people that have been on this podcast and what they've done, because that's how it started for me. I started listening to the So Money podcast and I was listening, binging every time. And then because of her, I started to learn about other podcasts like yours and other ones. And so I literally was just binging money podcasts and teaching myself. Then I started reading books and just binging books. So I just kind of developed it, but I wish I would have had somebody that I could go to and ask questions to. I wish I would have had somebody that could help guide me so it wasn't so hard. And you never know who might really be into money because we don't talk about it. So you never know. You might want to ask your friend like, hey, like, where do you have your savings? Or like, what do you listen to? And so for me, it was all about trying to figure it out. But if you're starting out now, is ask for help, ask people around you, especially people who are older, because they might have already gone through it and they might have a lot of suggestions and they might be willing to help you get started. But it really is about like, don't feel overwhelmed. Take it one thing at a time. Because if you're trying to do 10 things at once, of course you're going to be overwhelmed, right? Well, how do I do a budget? Well, how do I pay off the debt? Well, how do I save? Step one, do the budget. Step one. And then unravel the next step and the next step. Because until you have a budget, I'm a big proponent, like a budget is a foundational thing. Until you have a budget, you don't know how much debt you can pay off. You don't know how much you can save. You don't know how much you can invest. Because how are you going to know your numbers if you are not aware where your money is going? So I always tell people, start with the budget, ask questions, binge podcasts, read financial books. And that's where you can get all the information you need. And then it's going to start opening up different worlds for you.
Yeah, I love that advice. Now, one of the things that I find quite alarming as of late is the younger generation of folks. We're talking about like Gen Zers, we're talking about maybe even Gen Alpha. They have this skewed perspective on saving, which gives me anxiety, which is the world is burning. What does it matter? What the fuck is the point of saving and investing when literally I don't even know if we're going to be alive tomorrow, which I feel is like, it's a little bit dramatic, y'all. It's a little dramatic. So what do you say to people that have that perspective where it's like, well, what's the fucking point? It's all going to shit anyway. Let me just enjoy my time while I'm here.
Sometimes, especially currently, that's how it's felt. And two things is one thing is get off of social media, get off, because the doom thing doesn't help you because nobody knows. And that's the thing, even with with all the things that have been happening in the stock market, right? The thing is, we don't know. You could be thinking that things are going to go down and we're still going to keep living. I don't know. You don't know. I'd rather be working towards a way that I can feel secure rather than finding out when I'm like 60 that I can't retire because I never did anything because I was freaking out about the world ending. I would rather keep working as if those things are going to still happen and I'm still going to be alive and things are still going to keep working rather than find myself in a position where I've seen people work beyond what they could and should be because they have no other choice. And I've seen it firsthand. First of all, get off of TikTok, get off the news, stop listening to the news. If you're freaking out, get off of it and get out into the world, look at what's really happening around you. And just, it's better to always be prepared because none of us know. I don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. And so I would focus yourself on what you could do to set yourself up rather than going into the whole doom and like sticking your head in the sand and not doing anything.
Absolutely, y'all. And that is so real because I think so many of us, especially who are like elder millennials and Gen X, we are literally watching our parents be completely fucking unprepared for retirement. And so it's like you have the example in your face of what it looks like to not have any other options. If you have time on your side, at least give yourself a fair shot to not be one of these people that literally has to be working until you die. Because we know what that looks like and it's not a vibe. All right. So I'm curious for you, now that you are on this other side with your financial literacy journey and as a mom, how are you instilling financial literacy skills into your kids and what does that look like?
Oh, I love it. Ever since she was like 3 or 4 years old, money has been a part of the conversation. So now as an 8-year-old, you can see how it all has come out. And we started small, right? It was like going to the store, giving her $5. And then she wanted to buy something, helping her understand, okay, well, you have $5. How much does this cost? Can you get it? It was like very little and always emphasizing to her like savings. So the big thing for Japan was huge because we would tell her like, we're not going to buy this right now because we're saving for Japan. And we want to have money to spend in Japan. And so her seeing that in action has been so helpful for her. So now what we do, she has a chore chart and she has 2 chores per day that she does. And every time she does the chore, she gets $1 per chore. So she gets $10 a week. And then I pay her the cash. And then she decides how much do you want to save? How much do you want to put aside for you to spend? She had over $100 saved recently and she bought herself AirPods. And so she's able to like have that control, but she's also seeing the money grow. So I have it in my high yield savings account and I pay her interest based on her total just so she can see like how it works. We talk about her investment account all the time. And I explain to her like, this is your money for college and all that stuff. So always having open conversations. I always kept in mind that statistic that kids have already built their relationship with money by the time that they're 7. And so I was very intentional with her since she was about 3 years old about talking about money, about giving her cash to save. She had all her little cash saved. She actually bought fish on her own. And so we went to the fish store and I taught her about planning, right? Let's go to the fish store. Let's see how much things cost. So you know how much you need to save. So she went and she had her, I actually made a reel. It was really cute. She was like writing down like how much everything cost so that she would have the money and then she was counting her money. So it's always like helping them learn these tools and these skills so that they get it and they can do it on their own later on. And I see it in her now. She's like, Mom, can you save this for me? Can you put this in my savings? And so she's got it. And I'm like, yes, because I was never taught how to save money. And I was never taught that it's not just about earning money, which she's doing by doing her chores. And if she doesn't do a chore, she doesn't get paid for it, but also about being okay with spending her money and saving it and all of that.
I love that. That's brilliant. Okay, so obviously when we both started our financial journeys, life was a little bit different. Now we are like in post-pandemic era, inflation, everything costs more. It feels like it's harder for people to make financial progress. What's your advice if you do find yourself in a situation where it's like, Nathalia, I did the budget and the numbers are not numbering. Okay. Like, what the hell do I do now when I know that I'm literally not earning enough to keep up with my bills, to not be in the cycle of credit card debt? What are my options then?
It's two things, right? It's either you're an income problem or you don't have enough money, or it's an expenses problem. And so anytime that you find you do a budget and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money for the things, you can look at it, it's either one or the other, right? So if it's an income problem, it's getting creative. It's starting that, even what I've been doing recently is starting to go out and see what other opportunities I can do, or starting a side hustle, right? That's what I did. And so you have to figure out, how can I bring in more income? How can I bring in more money? But also maybe where can you cut down and be more intentional with your spending so that you give yourself breathing room there? And I always tell people, like, if you lay it out, you can tell what it is. If you have more money you're supposed to have left over, it's a spending problem. If you have in the negative and you're like, I have income and then my expenses are too high and maybe you're not a big spender, then it's an income problem. So start getting creative about how you can make more money. There's so many ways to make more money now. That you have side hustles, you have the blogging, you have all these other things that you can do. Put yourself out there. You never know. I kind of fell into the whole business thing. I never intended to do a business, just because I was talking about my money journey online and people started asking me to teach them. And so it could be that simple. Maybe you have something that you know how to do that somebody wants to learn. And when you talk about it, they'll know, hey, that person knows how to do this. Maybe they can teach me, and monetizing that. And so it's just a matter of getting creative.
I love that. I love that perspective of just understanding that you're not stuck where you are. You might think you are, but you're not actually stuck. And I love your advice about looking at your expenses too, because I think that's one of those areas of your budget that like people don't want to have an open mind about. Like, let's talk about housing, for example. It could just be like, well, I don't want to move. And then it's just like, okay, but what if it's a temporary thing that like you do that for a couple of years and then you can accelerate your savings, you can accelerate your investing. That type of short-term, quote unquote, discomfort can be the thing that launches you into financial freedom. And so I think it's important to just have that long-term perspective of like, if I do this now, what is the end result going to be? The temporary pain for like the long-term pleasure. I think we need to get better at that, because all of these sacrifices that you've made, things like having a one-car household, doing the stay-at-home dad thing instead of paying for daycare. These are not easy decisions, but they are decisions that will have a real lasting impact on your future goals. And you're not going to have to do that forever. And so I think maintaining that perspective of just like, this is not going to last forever, but if I get serious now, I'm going to have a lot more options later. That's what makes it worth it.
And yeah, I got to say, for the expenses is big for us. Big. I think maintaining our expenses as low as possible has made a lot of this capable for us to do. For example, when we had to move, we could have moved to a place where we were going to pay more rent. We could have potentially bought a house. Like, I could have gotten approved, but we chose not to, because we knew that we wanted more time to save and be like in a better place financially with our savings before we jumped into anything. And so we were very lucky that we found another place to rent that was under market value. That, sure, is it like ideal? No, but it's not about that right now, right? For us right now, it's about maintaining our expenses low so that we don't have to subscribe to just anything, so that we can save more money and make a decision from a place of security and not out of fear. And I think that's been another big thing. It's like, if you're in a situation where your expenses are low, maximize it. Maximize that at that point, because so many people are in a place where maybe they're not paying rent and they're not saving, they're not investing. That's your time. Really utilize it. And, we were paying low rent for years, which is what allowed us to do this. That meant renting from family. That meant renting a home that wasn't necessarily like the most beautiful or more up to date, but it is what it is. Like, we did it for that time period because we were prioritizing and valuing having my husband at home and being okay with those decisions, regardless of what people say.
Absolutely.
Right? We've had so many comments recently about just buy a car, just buy a car. I'm like, why? Why?
You'll pay for it.
I don't want. Exactly. They're like, it'll make things easier. Absolutely. But I'm okay with this temporary discomfort to get us ahead for what we want to do. Like, I'm not thinking about the next month or two. I'm thinking about in a few years where we want to be. And if I want to stay in Southern California, you're going to need that cash savings. So really, really hone in on your expenses and like maybe get uncomfortable and change them. Two things I did this year was divorce myself from Bank of America, which I had been with since I was 16 years old. And second thing was divorce myself from Verizon because I was paying so much money. And we went from Verizon to T-Mobile, and then they even paid off my husband's phone, and our bill dropped by $50-$60. And so little things like that, it's like, you're so used to that. Oh, I'm comfortable here because I've been there. I was with Verizon since I was 16. I was with Bank of America since I was 16. It's all I knew because my mom set me up there, and I was so comfortable, and it was so uncomfortable to think about stopping that relationship because I was used to it. But I'm like, it just wasn't serving us anymore. And we're more about the budget and expenses and saving more. And so sometimes it means shopping around. Sometimes it means getting creative, how to reduce that. And so I'm big on like, get your expenses low. If you don't really need or use it, get rid of it.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's a really important perspective to have because oftentimes, we see people who quote unquote have made it. They have the big house, the cars, the whole thing, but they also are prisoners of the life that they have created. So it's like, you out here worried about where I'm living. Meanwhile, you're house poor because you're stuck in this fucking job now that you hate to pay for these bills, to live this life that is literally a prison. And so I think when you start looking at money as the tool that you can use to have options, to have flexibility, to have freedom, to have choices versus this thing that is just, you got to show up to work every day to get because I got to pay this damn mortgage and I don't even like this house and I don't even know why I'm driving this car and all these things. It's a completely different perspective. That's how we get out of that consumerist mindset that really keeps us trapped in situations where it's just not where you want to be. So, Nathalia, I would love for you to tell us where we can find you on the socials, how you work with your clients in order to help them get to the other side of financial literacy. Tell us all the things.
So I am primarily on Instagram at chapina.buildingwealth. I am on Threads from time to time, but that's mostly where I'm at and where you'll find me. I do work one-on-one with my clients. And the whole reason that I started doing one-on-one is because I wanted to be the person that I didn't have. I wanted to make it easier. And I'm like, look, instead of spending hours listening and watching and doing and trying to figure it out on your own, let me just give it to you. I've already been there. I've already done it. And let me give you the step-by-step of what works and how to do it. And then also have accountability and support. And so that's what I do. I do 6 months of one-on-one coaching with my clients where we do everything from building your budget from scratch, doing the money audit, setting up savings, paying off debt, investments, all the things. And then, also teaching about the other things that you need, right? The protections, the estate planning that you mentioned, understanding the importance of having term life insurance, those long-term wealth protections that we need that most people don't think about or don't know about. And so that's what I do. I do primarily one-on-one coaching. It is my favorite thing to do because I can just work with people on Zoom calls. And literally I'm a hand-holding type of coach is what I always tell my clients. I will get on the call with you. I will help you figure it out. And I'm like the money friend that you wanted. So you don't have to stress. Let me take a little bit of that off and just give it to you, whatever you need.
I love that. And a fun fact, someone who works with a financial coach is actually 3 times more likely to achieve their goals. And when you talk about why that is, it's literally what you mentioned, which is the accountability. It is having that mentorship, that guidance, because DIY is cool for some things, but this world of personal finance can be quite complex. And it's important to have advice and guidance that is catered to your specific situation because none of this is a one size fits all approach. And so I love what you're doing, Nathalia. Please keep up the great work. And I'm looking forward to checking out your family's next adventure on the socials. You got to share with us some travel hacking tips in the stories so that we can start doing the same thing too. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much
for having me. This has been an honor to be here with you because you are one of the first podcasts that I listened to, one of the first big creators that I was following. And I always love your message because you're just so real. And so that's why I absolutely love it because I'm like, I love somebody that can just keep it real. And I try to be the same way. And so I absolutely love you and all the work that you do in your book. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being another powerful voice as a Latina, especially in this conversation, because back when this show started in 2019, it was lonely out here. All right. There was a lot of white guys yelling at us about money. And now the voices are much more diverse. And we have incredible mujeres like yourself who are empowering us to understand that you don't need to have some big fancy titles, some big fancy career. You don't need to be making six figures to become financially free. You just got to do some basic shit and be inspired by the work that people like yourself are doing. And regular schmegular job can get you to an extraordinary place financially. So don't be worried about, all the sensationalism that's out here on the social media streets. We don't need it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.